For some reason, it seems as though a lot of brand new woodworkers get the urge to stain their projects. I partially credit those TV remodeling shows for this popularity. Not that there's anything wrong with wood staining, but there are some misconceptions about it and how to use it that I thought I'd clear up. My name is Steve, and this is Woodworking for Mere Mortals, the channel dedicated to helping total beginners get started in woodworking. I am confident that anyone can build cool stuff without a lot of space or expensive tools. And I want you to start building this weekend by giving you free detailed plans to build this, the BMW, the Basic Mobile Workbench. Join the thousands of other people who have built the BMW as their very first woodworking project by heading over to basicmobileworkbench.com. Download the free plans and watch the first part of a step-by-step video to get you started. Before staining wood, ask yourself why you want to change its color. One of the decisions that goes into selecting a type of wood for a project is its natural color. When we're talking about hardwoods such as maple, walnut, oak, etc., most woodworkers prefer to show off the natural wood tones with a clear top coat only. Seeing the grain and color pop immediately after applying a protective finish is super satisfying, and wood will darken over time. Here's what cherry looks like after just a few years. So while staining hardwoods isn't unheard of, there are instances when you might need to match existing furniture or slightly alter the shade. It's pretty unusual. But keep in mind, these are just personal preferences. If you like the colors you get by staining any kind of wood and they make you happy, go for it. Don't limit yourself to arbitrary woodworking rules when it comes to aesthetics. Personally, I sometimes like to stain oak with a golden oak stain. It gives a rich, natural color that doesn't look fake. The whole idea behind stain is that you can color the wood but not cover up the grain the way paint does. Wood stains are probably most commonly used on pine boards and plywood. Typically, pine is the cheapest lumber you can buy, and a light color can make it seem like a blank canvas. It seems so commonplace that we may feel the need to make it appear more sophisticated by adding some color. Again, keep in mind, like all woods, pine will also darken over time to a rich yellowish hue. I think pine is a beautiful, highly underrated species and can look fantastic with just a clear finish. Consider embracing its character. Feature boards with knots and unusual grain patterns. But sometimes people might find pine just too rustic looking, and since it's pretty inexpensive, why not experiment with some color? This makes sense, and trying out different stain colors can be a lot of fun. Some stains can look unnatural. When you go to the home center or hardware store to select a color, you'll see all kinds of samples, but in my experience, they don't really look much like the wood species their names imply. But again, if a bold, dyed look is what you like, own it. For a more natural look, go more subtle with shades. A slight alteration to a wood's color can go a long way on the entire project. Stains don't protect wood. Stains color wood. Aside from some stains that come with a polyurethane blend or say colored Danish oil, you will need to apply a top coat over your stain to protect the wood from UV damage, scratches, spills, etc. For some reason, a lot of people begin woodworking thinking that staining wood is a requirement for a completed project. Mostly they're confusing wood stain with a wood finish, and I do believe a protective wood finish is a requirement for most woodworking projects. Another thing to keep in mind is that once you commit to a color and apply it to your project, the deed is done. There is no undo button. Unlike paint, which just sits on top of the wood and could be sanded off, wood stain penetrates deep into the fibers of the wood like a sponge absorbing water. Make sure you sand the wood well before applying stain. Any scratches will be enhanced by stain. Sanding will also help open up the pores of the wood so that they can better absorb the stain. Start out with 80 grit to remove big scratches and imperfections, then move up to 120 and finally 220 grit sandpaper. Make sure you remove any sanding dust from the surface. Vacuuming is ideal to remove any dust from inside those wood pores. You cannot just brush on a coat of stain like you would paint and just wait for it to dry. You'll end up frustrated and disappointed when parts of it still feel sticky after a few days. When wood has absorbed all the stain at once, the rest just sits on the surface and doesn't like to dry. To prevent this from happening, you must wipe off the excess stain after applying it. By the way, this isn't just some woodworking hack. The label on the can will tell you exactly how to apply stain correctly. So read it. The applicator you choose for applying stain doesn't matter. You can certainly use a brush if you like, but I would rather use a foam brush because they're cheap and disposable and they make cleanup a lot easier. But my go-to method for applying a stain is to use a rag. Old t-shirts are great for this, but sometimes I just use a paper towel for smaller projects. The idea is to get plenty of stain all over the surfaces, then wait a short time for it to soak in. Usually 20 or 30 minutes is fine. Then, this is the important part, wipe everything down with a clean rag. If you want the shade to be a little bit darker, you can apply a second coat. This one won't soak in as much since the pores of the wood are mostly saturated, so you can wipe it off after maybe 10 minutes or so. I don't usually apply 2 coats. Wood stains have a nasty habit of distributing themselves unevenly on softwood such as pine, which causes blotching. This is especially cruel since pine is most likely the kind of wood you want to stain. To reduce blotching, you need to apply a wood conditioner or sealer before applying stain. Stain manufacturers will recommend their own conditioners, or you could use shellac as a sealer coat over oil-based stains. Basically, a conditioner will stabilize the wood to allow the stain to penetrate more evenly. To use wood conditioner, just quickly brush it or wipe it on and let it penetrate and then wipe it off, just like you would with a stain. The only difference here is that you need to apply the stain before the conditioner completely dries, usually within 2 hours or so. The biggest question that comes up here is, can you apply an oil finish such as polyurethane over a water-based stain and vice versa? Technically, as long as the stain is completely dry, you may have to wait, give it a few days. Any top coat will work fine. Personally, I prefer not to chance mixing oil and water products and will use oil finishes over oil stains and water-based finishes over water-based stains. And with lacquer, I've never had problems applying it over either type of stain. Thanks for watching, everybody.